No one.
What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome to the Gators Online Podcast. Zach Abolverdi and Nick Torre live from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Got a great show lined up for you today because we will be speaking with Corey Bender from Gators Online. The Corey Bender. Getting the latest on all UF recruiting, but specifically Jaden Rashada watch. It has officially been all this week as he has made his way to Gainesville. Just wrapped up his official visit on Thursday and is now headed back to sunny California to think over his decision, Nick.
Got a 7-on-7 tournament, I think, which is why the weird Tuesday official, midweek official. But Florida fans will be watching to see where else he goes because the days are numbered before he makes that the decision on the 18th, his dad's birthday. You'd like to be the last official visit, that's for sure.
That would be good. That would be good. And then if he decides to take another official visit, they're like, oh, guess we didn't do enough.
Yeah.
But if you read Corey Bender's piece on Gators Online, it seems like the coaching staff did plenty enough on this visit based on what he's heard and some of the impressions that the family had. So we'll talk to Corey about all that. We'll get Nick's thoughts, obviously, on UF baseball and what was the Gainesville Regional that he had to suffer through. And we'll talk, obviously, regimen, as that's what the Gators are going through right now. They put out a nice workout video. I would really like to see the workout video of Nick doing CrossFit. That's really the money shot right there.
Yeah, it'd been over a year since I did CrossFit and jumped back in after Memorial Day with Murph, and my shoulders still hurt from 100 pull-ups and 200 push-ups. I'm going through my own regimen period.
Yeah, I mowed my lawn for the first time at my new place.
It's a riding mower. It's a ride mower. That's,
still a big chore.
You put some music on, and you're basically driving a little car around your property.
Well, I had to take the time to do it, and I was dedicated.
How many acres do you have?
It's fine. I'd rather not say.
Zach's got some acres, some acreage.
But hey, we got it done. You know, got
some sun doing it.
I did get some sun, and brought my new Arians mower in. So we're out there. That was the first time I had mowed a lawn in quite a while.
How was the mower first time out?
It was good. I mean, I had never had one with the bars like that. So I had to get used to, but once I figured out how to whip it, boy, I was whipping that thing. I mean, it's a nice, listen, for the folks that mow their yard, they know. I mean, it's a nice escape if you, like you said, you put the music in. It's much better than a workout, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. And you tell the kids, listen, Dad's going to be gone for the next hour. He's going to be. It's my excuse to
not have to help when there's a disaster in the house. Yeah.
Crisis. I couldn't hear you. Sorry. I was out mowing the lawn.
Got to let the wife handle it.
How long was the grass? You've been in that house for a while now.
Oh, no, it had been getting cut by someone else that was giving us a hell of a deal. Mm-hmm. And then finally came to us like, listen, guy, can't keep coming out here. We were too far out of his way. So we lost him.
Price went up?
No, price didn't go up. He just he couldn't keep us as clientele anymore. So then we, went out there and saw what the prices were from other folks in the area to cut lawns, and I went Rick Ross and said, you know what? I'm doing this myself. So we're getting after it. And obviously the football team has been getting after it. Summer regimen workouts this week, or really this for the past few weeks now. And more recruits also arriving to campus to take part in that. Guys moving in. Now they basically have almost their entire 2022 class of high school recruits now in Gainesville, 16 of the 18. So,
and you wrote it with the latest one, Arliss Boardingham, coming all the way from California.
He was here when Jaden Rashada was here, so maybe those guys connected. Who knows? Maybe Jaden Rashada got to see Hugh Hathcock whipping his Lamborghini around Gainesville.
I think he did. That not bright. It's like a baby blue, electric baby blue. If that even makes sense. It's flashy.
You don't miss it.
You definitely don't miss Hugh's Lambo. But yeah, that's another thing. Hugh whipped the Lambo up from Orlando yesterday, and I think you'll start seeing some of those recruiting pictures with a blue Lamborghini on the field trickle out.
Didn't even see it. Look, Nick's already thinking ahead of me.
I think you'll see some of those recruiting pictures start trickling out. Probably some videos. They replaced the bench with a blue Lamborghini.
They
replaced the blue bench and the retro gear with a non-retro, very expensive car.
That's what we would call an upgrade.
Yeah, slight upgrade.
Although I don't want to see the retro gear go anywhere.
That should stay. That should stay.
We saw one of their official visitors from last weekend, a linebacker from Jacksonville, put out a video edit and had that gear on. Man, it's a good look. And shout out to Dave for putting that together and offering Florida that kind of for their official visit experience, because it totally takes it up another notch.
For sure it does.
So we're going to get ready to jump to this first break. And when we come back on the other side, we'll be joined by Corey to kind of get where things are at with Jaden Rashada's recruitment, but also Florida recruiting in general, because this is a big month in June because you have camps happening. And it used to just be that, but now you have official visits that take place as well in the summertime. A lot of these guys that are looking to make early decisions want to get that over with before their senior years. So a lot of focus on that. Not so much with the summer camps because no media coverage coming from them. Yeah. So they've decided to kind of just make that, for the guys camping and the coaches that are working. And so if you haven't been seeing any videos or anything coming out, that's why. Nonetheless, Corey is still keeping you guys updated.
And if you want to give it a try, it's a huge week. I think 8 kids coming on officials this week.
Yes. Some
big names. Give it a try for 7 days. It's free. I think you'll stick around after you see the kind of coverage that Corey's going to give you for recruiting. And Zach and I are just hanging out until football.
Well, and I think, anytime you got a 5-star come into town, that's a big deal. Coming off of the heels of this top 100 quarterback visiting, I do want to mention before we jump to this break as well, we talk about this offseason and Billy Napier making a lot of right moves so far. I think 2 things stand out, and it has to do with attire, Nick.
Okay.
Saying I'm going with black uniforms and measuring the entire football team for 2 custom suits from Men's Warehouse. That's called taking care of your players.
Taking care of your players. You're listening. You're listening to what they want. They wanted black jerseys. Some fans wanted black jerseys. A lot of fans did want black jerseys. I think Billy Napier handled that perfectly with the donation. But I love the I didn't even know that it was legal or, under NCAA rule. Just the fact that there's a lot of guys that, I've been fitted for a suit once. I'm 33 years old. These guys, some of them don't even own a suit. Now they're going to get fitted for a suit. 2 suits.
A year.
A year. That's just something that they're going to have. Not everyone's going to go play in the NFL. Someone's going to have to go, after their senior year, and they're going to have 8 suits potentially, 10 suits potentially to choose from when they go on their first job interview after Florida. So I think that's really it's not 40 years, it's a 40-year decision.
Yeah.
A lot of coaches say that now, and I think you're starting to see, or this is one thing that Billy does that backs that up. Like, hey, you're not making a 4-year decision, you're making a 40-year decision, and now you're going to have a suit to go with. It might be insignificant to some, but I think it's pretty significant to a lot of these players.
And we saw former wide receiver Khalif Jackson share my story on this initiative that they did through Gator Made, and was like, I cannot tell you guys how big this is for the players, because the suit coat that I got my sophomore year was the same suit coat that I wore my first day on the job after college. So these guys are going to have the opportunity to get 8 if they're at Florida for 4 years, and 10 if they redshirt. So
Kyrie Elam would only get 6, but I think he can buy his own suits now.
I think, but look, as Nick mentioned, some guys, for the ones that don't make it to the NFL, but for the ones that do, they got suits to go through the draft process with, and to show up for interviews with teams, and to show up to the NFL Combine. So I think it's obviously, it helps them in so many ways. It helps guys right here now that are going to do internships while they're in college, that are just want to have suits for Gator Walk.
Yeah.
And they've been part of it in seasons past where some of their teammates are absolutely decked out,
dripped out
in suits, and they can't afford it, or that's not something that they have. Now everybody has that opportunity to show up with that swag. So we're going to jump to this first break. We'll come back on the other side and get a bunch of recruiting intel and scoop from the man himself, Corey Bender.
Hi, Steve Spurrier here. Making a reservation at my restaurant is easier than a Saturday afternoon homecoming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Welcome back into the Gators Online Podcast, and we're now joined by our guest of the week, Corey Bender from Gators Online, who covers recruiting for us and does a phenomenal job and is working extremely hard this time of year in the month of June. Corey, we appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us, bud.
No, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Well, obviously, everybody has been locked into all of this Jada Rashada news and the developments in his recruitment. You've been on top of it along the way as the Gators have put themselves not only in the picture, but have become a serious contender for the top 100 quarterback. They, I think, initially surprised some folks by making his top 7. Then they got him on campus for an unofficial visit, and now he returns for an official. You put out an intel piece today at Gators Online kind of detailing where things stand following that trip to Gainesville, his second one. And right now, I think Florida fans got to be feeling good if they've checked out that piece. But kind of run us down on his recruitment, Corey, and where things stand following this latest trip.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because earlier this year, a lot of people, including myself, they offered Rashada and some other highly regarded quarterbacks, and many thought it would be kind of too late in the game because some of these kids were actually already narrowing down their list. I'm not going to say they had their mind made up, but they're focused on a select group of schools. And the one thing with Rashada, too, he's fairly well reserved, doesn't really speak about his recruitment too often. So at the same time, I wasn't too surprised just because he doesn't really update his recruitment, at least publicly. So, he came for an unofficial visit, a multi-day visit in late May, and that's where it all really kind of kicked off. He's definitely the top target right now. I mean, Arch Manning's up there as well, but he's right now Georgia and Texas are the more realistic options for him. I mean, Florida would love to have that kid in the class, but right now it's basically I view it Jada Rashada or bust. And he came basically in late May. They provided him with the red carpet treatment. I know the family's very high on early playing time as far as with Florida. I mean, Anthony Richardson, I know it's a projection, but he's listing a lot of mock drafts already for next year. At the most, he'll be back for 2 years. So if Rashada redshirt next year, he'd be a redshirt freshman with the opportunity to start. And then if Richardson did leave after next year, I think this is the type of kid who definitely could challenge for the starting job as a true freshman, just based off, where their depth chart currently stands. I mean, you obviously have a transfer portal, and you can always, everything can kind of change in a blink of an eye. But right now, Florida has to be feeling pretty good. I talked to a source close to the situation who said, quote, the visit went amazingly well. And then it was also the best visit the family has taken throughout the whole recruiting process. And they've been to several campuses just recently, but a boatload of schools over the past couple of years. So right now, I think the biggest question is the other schools that are in the mix. He recently went to Texas A&M, LSU. Miami got him on campus early on in the process, and they could get him on campus one more time before he decides on June 18th. But right now, the one consistent school has been Florida. I mean, I think there's no doubting where they stand right now. And I think if he goes to Miami, that's going to be an interesting visit. And I know I spoke to someone close to Texas A&M who, as with a lot of these visits, the schools feel good. I mean, all these schools have so much to offer these kids, and I don't know how many kids would have a bad visit at any of these schools. It just depends which school you like more. So I know
unless they went to Florida State, right?
Say it one more time.
Unless they went to Florida State, of course.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and so it's with A&M, they felt good, but they weren't as optimistic just because of the Florida schools getting on campus before making decisions. So we got to see how it plays out, man. I mean, I know the next week and a half is going to be pretty. I mean, a lot of fans are going to be at the edge of their seats, but I know Florida's optimistic, and I definitely trust the person I spoke with who provided me with the info for the intel piece. So Florida definitely is in a good spot.
Yeah, it's like, how do you mess up a visit at this point? Like, everyone's got like the nice facilities. You've got all this playing time, and Florida's got 800 people for you to meet and to make sure you have a good time on staff.
Somebody can misspeak, or paint something in a light that he doesn't like or the family doesn't like, and obviously, if the feeling coming out of it was, hey, this is the best trip we've been on, then they clearly didn't give that impression.
And Corey,
it's usually only a communication standpoint that can go south. Because even like Tamarian Parker, when he visited with the old staff last year, like in the summer, he told me Florida was the leader. And then he later in the year, he basically dropped all communication with Florida because one of his other visits, he like didn't really speak with the staff. He was like, when they load up the golf carts to go everywhere, he was like the last one loaded up to go play. He like basically didn't feel like a priority, so he dropped Florida off his list. And that was one of the first times. Now Florida, like Chad Simmons just submitted a prediction in favor of Florida because of what the new staff is doing with them. So it just shows how the recruiting process, how it can do like a 720.
And you said there, you think it's Jaden Rashada or bust for Florida. They've had a couple quarterbacks that they've seen before him. If something goes wrong and Jaden Rashada doesn't come to Florida, would you think they would just not have a quarterback in the class?
I think they would. I think they would sign a quarterback in the class. I think there's some other kids probably on the radar they're looking at. I know they're looking at some kids in the transfer portal, but just based on where everything was, I'm not gonna say the kids weren't Florida quality, but it was kind of a reach at the same time. So that actually would be one of the more interesting things this cycle is if they don't get him, where do they go from here? I mean, you obviously offered Marcus Stokes, the kid from Nice High School, who's committed to Penn State, but even with that, that's not even a guarantee. I mean, you could also view it as, hey, you didn't look at, I wasn't good enough the first time around, you and offered me, and Penn State, hate to say it, they're out recruiting Florida right now. So he's like leading the class recruiting wise. So there's no guarantee he would even flip to Florida, even though he told me before if they ever offered, it'd be a huge deal. But, some kids are kind of like up in their feelings about this stuff. But yeah, they could offer other kids. I mean, Dylan Lonergan was another kid they were looking at, but communication with him kind of dropped off. It's really Rashada. I mean, you got Arch Manning, and they have another kid.
But like the whole Arch thing is kind of like, hey, we're at the altar waiting for you. If you come, we would love that. But we're not expecting you to walk down the aisle.
Yeah, he's supposed to take see, that was the other thing too with him. He's supposed to take a visit to Florida. He's been planning on it at some point. But he also went on record saying it would be unofficial. And I think that right there kind of speaks volumes because, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, they're getting officials. And if you go to Florida, I mean, obviously you're coming down on your own dime. But you just think if you're more serious about Florida, they would get one of the officials. So
that family has lots of dimes.
Yeah, that's the other part too. I mean, obviously getting down there is not a problem. But it's just, I mean, at this point, Georgia and Texas are considered the teams to beat, and then if some other school kind of swoops in, I think that would be kind of you can almost label it as a shocker, honestly, just based off where everything is.
And obviously he hasn't made the effort yet to come to Gainesville, and Jaden Rashada has now twice. So he clearly has serious interest in Florida. Corey, you've covered recruiting for a long time. We talked about this on the pod earlier about how, really when it comes to quarterback recruiting, those relationships probably start sooner than any other position. And those guys are building those relationships with the head coach, with the quarterback coach, with the guy that's going to be calling the plays. And that goes into the decision big time. For Florida to be at a disadvantage in this cycle with so many quarterbacks because they didn't have that time with them during their freshman and sophomore years, how significant is it that they've put themselves in a position to land a quarterback of Rashada's quality and get him on campus twice this late?
No, 100%. I mean, that's why part of the reason why when Rashada and these other kids were offered, I was like, okay, cool. If they offered them, and we're going to reach out and see if there's interest. But at the same time, a lot of these kids, including Rashada, were already talking about making a spring decision. And I think at the same time, Florida's one of those schools where, from academics to just playing in the SEC, playing in the swamp, they check off so many boxes. But I think the other appealing part is early playing time. I think if you really dissect their depth chart, after Anthony Richardson, it's completely wide open. I mean, Jack Miller's on the roster, but I mean, that's no guarantee. I mean, you think after he leaves, that'd be the natural guy to kind of come in and, replace him at least for a year. But I think looking at it when you're a quarterback in high school, I mean, you really can come to a program, and that was another appealing part. And then obviously too with like NILs taking off, and I mean Florida's definitely been successful in that department when it comes to taking care of its players. So I think it's definitely, I mean, you definitely have to pat the staff on the back, just the fact that they were able to get a visit, but now an official. But at the same time, I think Florida right now, just if you view where they're at quarterback and where recruiting is, I mean, it's a very appetizing situation if you're a kid, a high caliber who wants to come in and start several years. So, and then, one thing too that Rashada has mentioned is just, Napier's, resume when it comes to working with quarterbacks. And obviously he speaks very highly of Ryan O'Hare as well. And he doesn't have as long as a resume, obviously, as Napier, but, the early reviews when it comes to people that know O'Hare have been fairly high as far as from a technical standpoint, the way he teaches quarterbacks. So, yeah, I think Florida, it's one of those cycles where they definitely were at a disadvantage. And that's why I thought this cycle – they would have offered Marcus Stokes. I'm not going to say settle at quarterback this cycle, but really go all in 2024 because you have time to build those relationships. So, yeah, if they can reel in Rashada, I mean, that's a huge thing for them. They definitely deserve a lot of credit for sure.
How far has Florida been able to come in such, like you mentioned, in such a short time? And what other than maybe playing time do you think you can attribute that to?
Are you talking about, you referring to Rashada?
Yeah, referring to Rashada. Because like you just said, you kind of offered him late. He's a kid that was talking about a spring decision, obviously making it the 18th this month. And he's got relationships with, Oregon, Nick Saban, Georgia, going back years. It's just it's just the reality of getting into a school, in December and trying to find a quarterback for the next class.
Yeah, and I think too, like a lot of it just has to do with just Florida, the brand. I really believe that. I just think, I mean, any Power 5 school is a great opportunity, and obviously playing the SEC is a great opportunity for like South Carolina, Ole Miss. But I kind of view Florida as like the next tier, and I think a lot of these kids give Florida a pass in their mind too, knowing like, hey, they just offered me late, but at the same time, they just got there. And obviously, no matter what, if they could have offered them last fall, they would have offered them last fall. I mean, the old staff offered a shot. I think it was last summer, I believe, maybe in the spring. So if Napier's staff would have been in place, they would have offered them a long time ago. And I think a lot of these kids know that too, that when they came on, they had to kind of put all their attention on 2022 and finish a class. And I know Rashada's dad plays a pivotal role in his son's recruitment too. So you have that logic as well, just coming from the dad, just knowing like, hey, these guys just got there. They kind of in my eyes, they kind of get a pass with a lot of these kids just because, they just got there. They just finished up the 2022 class. But I think right now there's just and the thing is too, with Rashada's dad, he played at Arizona State. And that's another part when it comes to that comfort level when giving Florida actually a realistic shot here is, his dad would always come back to Arizona State as alumni, come back and view games. And that was also during the time when Napier was the OC and quarterbacks coach. So they've known each other for much longer than, Napier's been at Florida. So that was also, and then when you mix in his success at Louisiana and then Florida's depth chart and just what Florida can offer, you kind of view it as like a total package situation if your son's a highly regarded quarterback. So I think the whole family did its homework here.
And it kind of makes up for the lack of the relationship during the recruiting process that Napier would have with his son. The dad can say, well, I know him. So, I mean,
I can vouch for him.
I can vouch for him to a degree. So, and I think the part you mentioned about the quarterback appeal, obviously you mentioned Anthony Richardson and Rashada being able to look at where he's projected, the fact that NFL draft analysts have their eyes on the Florida Gators quarterback and what that kind of means for his position. You look at what Kyle Trask was able to do just a couple years ago, turning himself into a second-round pick, and there's statues out front as well. I mean, we're sitting here at Steve Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. So Florida's got a lot to offer for a guy that's an elite signal caller. But again, those guys usually come off the board pretty early, usually always before their senior season. So the fact that Florida's put themselves in the mix here is a kudos and credit to the new staff. They're not just got a big week for Rashada coming to town, Corey. They have another huge recruiting weekend coming up. Give us a rundown of the official visitors expected in town. I know one of them is a 5-star prospect, and kind of how big of a weekend this is for the staff.
Yeah, no, I think this whole month of June is going to be huge because the majority of their top targets are all coming this month. There'll probably be about a half dozen to a dozen kids coming in the fall, and that might actually get, if more offers go out depending where the class is, that number could increase. But I think just these first 3 weekends are jam packed with kids. And yeah, today Peter Woods comes in town for official visit, and I know some people might ask why he's coming in town today instead of tomorrow. It's his father's a pastor, so with him working on Sundays, they wanted to fit in. The family wanted to fit in the schedule, so he would come today and they could leave Saturday. So
I know Billy Napier respects that.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. And that way, he doesn't have to miss work. And at first, they were trying to fit that in the schedule, and they were able to, so that was a good thing. So Peter, he's heavily trending towards Alabama, but I think Florida might be that number 2 school for him. He actually said last year around this time, Florida was leading. I kind of buy that. Alabama, they're the in-state school. They've got them on campus over a dozen times. So I think they're going to be tough to beat. But from what I've heard, Florida just is kind of viewing it like, hey, let's just get them on campus and we'll go from there. That's all you need to do in recruiting. Get them on campus, and then the work will, kind of tell itself as far as where they stand with them. And then obviously this weekend, it's a big list. You have Malik Bryant, who's a top edge defender out of Orlando. I think that comes down to Florida and Alabama. It's a pretty tight race right there. Raylan Wilson, he's a kid out of Tallahassee, a Michigan commit, linebacker, one of the top linebackers on the board. I think he stays closer to home, man. I think Georgia and Florida are like the main schools trending for him right now. Michigan, he's committed to Michigan, so obviously they're right there too. But I think he plays closer to home. I think Georgia right now, they just got him on campus last weekend. If I had to put a prediction out today, I was forced to. I'd probably say Georgia, but Florida could definitely make a move this weekend, and that would be a huge thing for them. You have Derek LeBlanc. I think we all know. We talk about him every week. He's been on campus like a dozen times this year, and he keeps coming to campus. This is his official visit, and he's not deciding until October, but I think Florida obviously is still in a great spot right there. Same thing with Peyton Kirkland, another kid out of Orlando, 6'7", big body in the trenches along the offensive line. I think he was actually one of my top 3 most important visitors for this weekend, just because there's been so many momentum swings here. Florida was viewed as like the pretty heavy favorite during the early portion of the spring, but there's some people in Oklahoma, up in Norman, that believe Oklahoma could win out, and then I know Miami's right there too. So I know Florida's going to really roll out the red carpet for him. He's a big-time target. And the last few, I'll touch on a few of the other names too. TJ Searcy, he's a top 100 kid out of the state of Georgia. A kid that Coach Mike Pearson is very high on, one of his top targets overall. South Carolina's been trained good, but I've actually been told by a few people that Florida is really surging with that kid. I was close to putting him on the most important list, but at the same time, I think South Carolina, they're right there at the top. So they have, especially in the trenches this weekend, man. It's a very heavy weekend in the trenches. A lot of top kids, and I think one other guy I'll mention too is Justice Haynes. I think you guys remember his dad played at Georgia. I don't know why his dad's name is slipping my mind right now, but his dad was a running back in Georgia, played for the Steelers, and he's a Georgia legacy. So at the end of the day, I think he plays for the Bulldogs when it's all said and done. But Florida's right there too. Obviously, anytime a top 5 running back wants to officially visit your program, no matter if the odds are stacked against you, you still welcome the campus. And
sure,
you do your best to kind of sway his mind and try to get in there. So, and then obviously you have Najee Harris, offensive line commit out of IMG Academy. He's going to be recruiting. And then the last guy on the list is Will Norman, who's another kid at IMG, defensive lineman, 4-star kid. Harris is definitely in this year. Their teammates, those two are really close. I put in a prediction for Florida about 2 months ago. So that's another key visit for Florida too. So heavy weekend in the trenches, and Florida's in a good spot with a lot of these kids.
That big budget for the catering this weekend.
Better roll it out.
Yep. No, I was going to say after I know who it was. I think last weekend one of the kids put out basically the menu for the food for dinner, and I was like, oh my god, it was like filet mignon. It was crazy. It was crazy as far as the menu they had for all the food they're feeding these kids. Man, I'm jealous.
I think they'll probably get to see the building that we're filming or taping in right now too.
They will be making their way to Spurrier's. That's kind of
I was gonna say Spurs is always on the calendar every time they come in, every single time.
Well, we saw that on the calendar during the first weekend of June as guys made their way to Gainesville. Corey, you put out a great piece this week at Gators Online called Corey's Corner, basically your recruiting intel piece that you put out, really recapping that first weekend, where the Gators stand with every single prospect that came to town, how they improved their chances, what work is still left to be done. Kind of take us through that piece and how that first weekend went for the Gators with some of the guys that came to Gainesville.
Yeah, no, I kind of put out that I thought it was a huge success. And, some people were like, well, we didn't get commits. And I just think in this day and age, man, a lot of these kids, especially if they're taking several officials in June, a lot of them are going to take their officials. I mean, you'll have certain kids, and people have to realize this is Florida. I mean, you'll have certain kids commit on visits kind of in the moment, but it's nothing against these other programs, but they're like the mid-tier Power 5 programs where a lot of these kids are considering Florida, Alabama, Georgia. They kind of view it as a business where they're going through each and every visit and not really getting caught up in the moment and deciding right there and then. So I know they didn't get any commitments last weekend, but it was still a good weekend. And, Aiden Mizell, he's a wide receiver out of Orlando, legacy kid. Both of his parents ran track in Florida. He named Florida his leader, and that was a really big deal. And I put in a prediction, about almost over a month ago, just because, they're prioritizing him. Obviously the legacy part, Florida's the school he loved growing up. But now that he's went on record saying Florida's the leader, I thought that was very key. He's going to Tennessee this weekend. Georgia and Alabama will get visits too. But he's looking to decide by the end of summer. And I think Florida is sitting in a great spot. I mean, schools are definitely trailing right now. And in my opinion, it's going to take quite a bit for any school to overtake Florida. So that was a big deal. Jordan,
he's been to campus a bunch, hasn't he? He was there for like a junior day over the summer. I remember talking to him at a junior day.
Yeah, and so he's been there a few times for track. He went once for an unofficial, but he's been up there for track too because of the relays in Gainesville. But this past weekend was the first time where it's like wasn't anything to do with track, where he like literally could just dedicate every minute he's up there to football. So that made a big deal, like definitely having that FaceTime with the staff. But yeah, no, he's been up there quite a bit. Jordan Castile, he's a kid out of Winter Garden. On 300 safety, just out of the top 100. So he's a highly regarded kid. Florida likes him at safety, but they can kind of move him all around. He didn't go on record saying Florida's the leader, but I went ahead and put in a prediction for him. There's just too many boxes Florida checks off there, just from proximity, working with Corey Raymond, Florida's reputation with DBs, and just him being an in-state kid and that familiarity. So that's another kid I can see definitely join the class. Trayon Webb was there, the running back out of Jacksonville. And he canceled his visit to Tennessee. He's going to Penn State this weekend, and next weekend he should be coming back to Florida for another unofficial before he goes to South Carolina on the 24th. Everything it's still shaping up to be Florida right now. Obviously, he's a kid that's made commitments to Georgia and Oklahoma in the past, so. Anything can really happen. You can go to South Carolina and get blown away, and next one school's leading. But at this point, I would just be very surprised if you end up in Florida's class. They're dedicating so much time to him, especially Napier himself. And that's played a huge role here. Is how Billy Napier is basically the one recruiting the hardest at Florida, and that's really impressed the family. So Florida wants to sign 2 running backs, possibly 3. I guess depending on which ones they would actually get in the class, but 2 is probably the more likely number. So I expect Webb to be that first one. So they're in a good spot with him. And a few other names I'll touch on is Grayson Howard. He's a linebacker out of Jacksonville. Big time, just like the Michigan commit Raylan Wilson. He's another top linebacker target for Florida. Extremely close at the top right now. And I was told, this isn't out there yet, but I was told there's a good chance, more than likely, he's coming back to Florida for unofficial next weekend, which would be a massive
Pup Howard?
Huh?
Is that Pup, the kid I saw?
Yeah, Pup. Yeah, no, that's him. Yeah, see, Nick knows his recruiting. That's awesome.
See?
Listen, he put out that video edit from his official visit. That was awesome.
It seemed like almost the same style of edit that they did when they were announcing kids who were signing day.
Yeah, just new frames and new scenes and stuff.
It's almost like the same edit they made for Zach when he joined Gators Online.
Yeah, that's just kind of treatment Zach
just
gets.
not as fire.
That was funny. With him, South Carolina is. Man, it's very interesting because Florida's right there at the top. I mean, like they're really recruiting that kid hard. I mean, from Jamar Chaney, Mike Peterson, Jay Bateman, Napier. I mean, everyone's kind of really involved with him. South Carolina has been the school trending just because he's been there like 5 or 6 times, and that's another situation where you kind of come in, you're a new staff. Where South Carolina, it's just that staff has been together longer, so he's been able to build a longer, relationships have been in place for much longer. But Florida's right there. The only thing that worries me with that is South Carolina is getting official this month after Florida. And that can, and how it is, if you get one of the first officials, some of these other schools could be more fresh in the kid's mind after that. So they're in the mix. He's a top 5, and then Georgia's the 3rd school I'm really focused on. His dad actually grew up a big Georgia fan. If I'm not mistaken, I think his dad grew up in Georgia too. So there's definitely strong interest in Georgia, but I kind of view it as South Carolina 1, Florida 2, and Georgia 3. But between South Carolina and Florida, it's pretty close. I mean, it's almost not a toss-up because I would give the edge to the Gamecocks, but Florida's making up ground. And the last one I'll kind of mention here, because I know we had some commitments too that, I mean, there's nothing really new with them. They're just recruiting for Florida. But Kelby Collins, he's a top 100 kid, All-American D lineman.
Yeah.
So Alabama's an in-state school, and, they've been trending for a long time, understandably so. So that's a school really to monitor. But I spoke to someone recently that kind of said Alabama's somewhat slow playing them, just because of like where their board stands right now and how many guys they have as far as defensive line targets. So that could be really key. It just depends if they filled up, and then you have Florida kind of like in the mix as like maybe a number 2 school. You have other schools like South Carolina's getting him on campus this weekend as well. But the one thing I took away though is he's going to sign early, and Alabama has an official visit set for December 9th. So that's usually the week before signing day. And when I kind of look at that, to me, that just is a recipe for, Alabama coming out on top, as long as Alabama feels the same way about him. So Florida's optimistic there, but it's a long way because I think he's going to wait this out and maybe make a decision about 4 months from now.
I think Florida fans are waiting for Corey Bender to say something like that about Florida. It's like if Florida's getting that last visit, if Florida feels the same way about him, it's probably probably them.
That's how they feel about Jaden Rashada. I mean, they could end up with the last official, which would definitely feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Miami, see with Rashada too, like Miami could get this last visit before, but it's not guaranteed. And I don't know if he'd be an official either. I don't know if he'd be. That's the one thing I'm still trying to figure out if he does go to Miami, because he technically has one more official left.
Well, and so that is the coach. That is the coming, because there's so many schools that he's considering that have first-year coaches. Mm-hmm. So it's like one thing. And I've wrote about that in our mailbag because fans have asked us. I don't think that's something that's going to not having a long-standing relationship is going to be a deal breaker for him. However, if the guy that he has the longest-standing relationship with is Mario Cristobal, because he was recruiting him at Oregon, which is what put Oregon kind of in the mix to begin with, and now has since continued to recruit him since he joined Miami. So let's see how. And then
you have Ole Miss who just got his brother in. But so, and then people view Ole Miss as a dark horse. I was told directly from someone that I definitely trust a whole lot that Jaden kind of wants to do his own thing. Like he likes Ole Miss, and they're definitely on the list. They're in his top group, and you can never rule out a school. But I was told like they're not considered a package deal at all. Like Jaden kind of wants to do his own thing. And I know Ole Miss, I'm not mistaken, they already have a quarterback in the class. I think they got a transfer too, not too long ago. So not saying the kid wouldn't go there because of those reasons, but you look at Florida's situation compared to a lot of these other schools, like even with Miami, with Van Dyke down there, who's done great things for the Hurricanes. I mean, he has, I think, 2 more seasons, I think, or he might have been a redshirt freshman, then a redshirt sophomore this year. Coming up here, so he would be draft eligible. But Florida's depth chart to me is a little bit more concrete about wherever he stands.
For sure. As we wrap up with Corey Bender, I want to ask you one final thing, Corey. Obviously, the Gators got 3 commitments in the month of May. I think that by the time we wrap up the months of June and July, we're going to see a few more guys jump on board with the Gators. That, depending on who it is, could really change the trajectory of this class. So still, I think, a ways away from really kind of judging where this thing is heading. But just on your experience in covering this staff so far, what do you like about how they recruit? What are some of their strengths? What are some of the reasons that they've been able to impress the recruits that you've talked to so far in the 2023 cycle?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just the unity up there, man. A lot of these kids have just raved about how basically how close the staff really is. From when they go on these visits, they can tell, like, yeah, they have their coworkers, but they can tell they generally enjoy being together, and just the overall energy and just the overall, as far as Napier's structure from top to bottom, a lot of kids have really raved about that, just knowing it's really a family atmosphere in Gainesville. And I can, the one thing I do respect about the staff too is obviously when we work for like a recruiting, like we cover recruiting on our websites, but they really don't look at the rankings. I know it's like you look at the last cycle when they dropped Jaden Gibson, or Jaden Gibson decommitted, but communication wasn't really there. They did. A lot of people were just like baffled by that. They didn't know why, but they just went about their business and they recruited the guys they thought that fit their program and system. And you have a lot of other schools that I remember a few years ago I was covering on the national side, and it was funny, like Louisville would offer a kid and then Purdue would offer right after, and they would literally mimic each other as far as offers. So you can tell, like, they're kind of like always looking at the recruiting websites, which we appreciate, and they're looking around and seeing who else offers. But this staff, they're going after kids that I was like completely on the West Coast that I never even heard of. They're just more West Coast kids, and they really just kind of do things their own way. They don't get influenced, and that's like something you don't always see with recruiting. So I think just the way Napier is, I think the way he just the way he runs his program from top to bottom impresses me. And the one thing too, man, is like their dedication to the trenches. Every kid I've talked to along the whole line, and the reason why Florida's near the top for a lot of them is just the fact they have 5 coaches dedicated to the whole line. I mean, you have Sale and Stapleton, but then you have like 3 assistant offensive line coaches.
I've said it before, they have a whole offensive line coaching the offensive line.
Yeah, it's crazy. So look, a lot of these kids have said that, like, in their deciding factors why they like Florida, and like just like from a developmental standpoint, they know they're going to get work in, they're going to get better during their years in Gainesville. And I just think the staff too, man, it's just the energy level, even with like Katie Turner, like Cedric Baxter, like has said it, and I think who was it, Jordan Hall in Jacksonville was a top 100 kid said too, like her energy, and I think she's like one of the best like recruiting coordinator. They call her recruiting coordinator, but recruiting assistants that they've been around. So, and just from the coaching staff to the support staff, or what we should actually call Napier's Army. I should be more correct on that. Yeah, so I think just from top to bottom, it's just the staff tirelessly working, and that energy level that's been tough to deny for a lot of these kids.
They need to recognize, though, she's got AD in that title. So
yeah, exactly.
Can't
they all, anytime when it comes to recruiting staff, and everyone just, all the kids calling them like recruiting coordinators. So I just give them a pass.
They got 47 recruiting coordinators on campus. You mentioned one name there I wanted to ask, not to hold you too long, but Cedric Baxter there. Yeah. Running back, Florida had felt good about him. Obviously one of the higher ones on their board. Just saw some Alabama momentum there, though.
Yeah, no, definitely. So he spoke to Chad. So he had a top 5, and Arkansas was in there. But then he replaced Arkansas with Alabama, just because Alabama kind of came on harder in the last couple of months. Said like, hey, like I love Arkansas, I'm going to root them on, but I just can't turn on Alabama. That's Alabama. So
for sure,
Alabama is now in their top 5. And then just in the last 24 hours, he told Chad that Alabama is the school he likes the most right now. He went to Twitter right after, and like he didn't quote tweet Chad or like On3, but he tweeted out "relax," like, because Florida fans. And you can actually blame me for this because I put out a GIF of like Florida fans all upset in the stands, and I was like, I thought it'd be fun, but yeah. So like Alabama's probably, like right now they're just a hot team in his mind.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes down to it, as the year goes on, I still think Florida and Miami are right there as well. Probably those 3 schools realistically, and then he has Texas. And Texas A&M in his top group. Well, I mean, he likes those schools a lot. Obviously, there's a reason why they're in the top 5, but I don't see them in that top group. So
listen, Alabama can't land Cedric Baxter and Richard Young. Come on now, one of those guys.
And Christian O'Leary, his teammate from Edgewater a few years ago, is at Alabama too. He was a former Florida target. So that connection's in place. I know he's recruiting him, but from I talked to someone close to the situation 2 days ago. I haven't put this on the site yet because it's been back and forth. Florida was hoping to get him on campus. I believe it was the 18th. What day is it? Yeah, the 18th, next Saturday for unofficial. I hit him back to myself and got to see what he said about that. He said he has to see But he also told Chad that he might go up to Tuscaloosa that weekend too. So that weekend, next weekend, the 18th, is going to be a big visit weekend. It just depends if it's going to be Florida or Alabama, which school he goes to. So Florida's right there. I wouldn't get too worried with him. He's going to take his visits, take his time, and I think Florida's been the most consistent with them. Miami's been a good spot too, but Florida's just doing a great job with him. And Alabama, you can't really argue if you're really a Florida fan. If a kid likes Alabama, it's like, okay, I get it. It's that type of thing. But I think it's a 3-team race right now, but it's gonna drag out for quite some time. If I'm a Florida fan, I wouldn't get too upset.
Well, and should Florida land some of those other Orlando area prospects, and should they land Jaden Rashada, that's certainly going to help their chances trying to attract the top running back. So, Corey, we are fortunate that we were able to land you today. We really appreciate you taking out time to talk Florida recruiting, Jaden Rashada, and everything else that you discussed today. I know you've been a busy man. Let everybody know where they can follow you on social media and read all your work.
Yeah, you can follow me at Corey, COREY, and then _Bender, BENDER. And then obviously for our sites is Gators Online. I almost said our old website for a second. Gators Online on Twitter.
You almost pulled a Zach.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, I almost did. And then obviously GatorsOnline.com for a website. So we're also running a 7-day free trial. So definitely jump on that if you haven't already. And yeah, should be another jam-packed recruiting weekend. So wish me luck.
Absolutely, man. Well, we appreciate your hard work. I know we're all taking it in, and keep it up, buddy.
Thank you, brother. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, we're going to jump to this break. We'll come back on the other side and wrap up the Gators Online podcast.
Looking for more reasons to celebrate? We have them here at Celebration Point. Enjoy some of the newest additions to our already celebratory lineup, like Dave & Buster's, Les Macarons, and Prime and Pearl. There's always a reason to celebrate. Join us anytime for any occasion. Celebration Point, where Gators come to celebrate.
Welcome back into the Gators Online podcast. Appreciate Corey for joining us and giving us all the details and scoop and intel and you name it.
The guy's forgotten more about recruiting than a lot of people know.
Listen, man, he does an incredible job. It's not easy trying to read the minds of high school kids and
which changed by the hour.
Get left on red.
No.
Hung up on.
I knew recruiting wasn't for me when a 16-year-old hung up the phone. I was like, I didn't even want to talk to you anyway. I was doing this for somebody else. And that my ego cannot handle being hung up on by a 16-year-old.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, Nick.
No, my heart is faint.
Nor was the Gainesville Regional.
No. Man, we almost got away with no rain.
Oh, like you said, contractually obligated. It had to happen.
Yeah, we all would have been fined. Everyone in attendance at any of the first 6 games would have been fined if there wasn't rain. I talked to the head groundskeeper who said 2011, it did not rain for the super regional or the regional in Gainesville. So it's been 12 years or 11 years. We did not break the streak as we got rain on Monday. A nice 5.5-hour rain delay in the 7th. And I will say, I don't know if it's true. This is how I feel. Without the rain delay, the way the game was going, I think Florida wins that game.
Of course they
had the momentum.
Of course they win that game.
They're up 2-1. Come back from the rain delay, and 20 minutes after, it's no longer 2-1. It's 5-2. And I'm thinking, man, wait 5.5 hours for Florida to lose a lead like that.
Where does that 5.5 rank?
Well,
they had a longer one recently.
I think they've, in terms of just one delay, like I've been to a regional where we've had multiple 18 hours of rain delays over 3 days. 20 hours of rain delays.
Not for the faint of heart, as we said.
Yeah, it's a long process, but we got through.
What do you do during the rain delay? Do you leave the stadium? Do you stay in the press box?
So shout out to Graham Hall. There was a 2-hour window where it was just lightning. So we were in a weather delay, not a rain delay.
Definitely not going anywhere.
So it was just lightning. And there was a 2-hour, during that, I could have gone to my car. And then the second 3.5 hours of the delay was just raining sideways and not getting to my car, which is parked out in the outfield. So I could have been home. I could have been sitting on the couch with the dogs for 5.5 hours. Instead, just slowly losing our minds in the press box. You got about 40 people up there because everyone taking pictures. All the TV people are in there.
All the food's been ate.
We ended up getting dinner.
Yeah, they had to.
We ended up getting more food after.
Didn't plan on that being on the budget for this week.
No, that it was one extra meal that we got. But
What was it?
So we had pizza in the morning. I say morning, but I mean I got there at 11, so I guess it's still technically morning. But because you have to talking to the person who ordered it is like that's the only thing I can order and like feel okay canceling. Because if Florida had lost at 11 p.m. on Sunday, when the game ended, 11 p.m. on Sunday, well, I don't want to call. I can't cancel barbecue. Like they've been cooking that for 18 hours already.
Yeah.
The pizzas they just fire up and they open
Sure.
Domino's at 10, fire up those personal pizzas, and then they bring them over and they're there. So it was pizza in the morning and then Chick-fil-A for dinner. A little Monday.
I am going to get Chick-fil-A as soon as we leave
A
here.
little Monday Chick-fil-A dinner.
I said it to Evan while you were out. Spicy chicken. It's calling my name.
That's on the way home.
It's on the way home. And got to get something for the little missus.
For the little girl?
Yeah.
Well, when you say Mrs., I don't know if you're speaking of your wife.
Well,
or
actually,
your daughter.
I might as well get them for both.
Don't bring just the. Actually, you can probably get away with that. Not bringing your wife something as long as you're feeding the daughter.
Because by the time she gets off, maybe cold. But I mean, Chick-fil-A warmed up is always good.
That's good. Yeah. It was interesting. So Florida, we talked about it, made a miraculous run at the end of the year just to even host a regional. And then the problem is when you're seeds 13, 14, 15, 16, you're going to get a good regional. And Florida had probably one of the toughest. Kevin O'Sullivan said it's probably one of the best 4 seeds they had in Central Michigan. It was the only 4 seed that won 40 games all year. They had to play that team twice. And the kid Florida faced on Friday, Andrew Taylor, is going to be a first or second round draft pick this year. So it's not just like, hey, you're playing a team from the MAC. It's like, yeah, the kid we faced is going to be pitching in the majors in a couple of years. Beat Central Michigan twice. Lost the first game they played against Oklahoma. Just ran into a good team. And,
I'll add that they won when I came for the opener. So there's that.
6-0 in the park.
As a spectator.
As a spectator, 6-0. And then you have to go. So when you get into the losers bracket, it's tough. Florida got a great pitching performance from Brandon Sproat. It's tough to see the guys after the game. And I'll get into that in a second. But they got a great pitching performance from Brandon Sproat. An unbelievable pitching performance. I wrote all about it at Gators Online. From Karsten Finvold, who threw as many innings in relief against Central Michigan as he had thrown all year long. He threw 9 innings all season and then threw 9 innings against Central
His
Michigan.
performance made no sense.
Sorry, against Oklahoma, not against Central Michigan. Against Oklahoma in the second game. I've been at Florida for 10 years, and I've never seen a guy pitch 9 innings, get all 27 outs in relief. He came into the game with the bases loaded, no outs in the first inning, and you're thinking, all right, just hold him to 2 runs here.
Yeah.
Hold him to 2. If they score 3, that's fine. Just you got to get out of this somehow. Don't make it a gigantic blow up inning. He gets 3 pop-ups out of the inning. Almost threw his shoulder out, fist pumping so hard because of the job that he was able to do there. People are talking about building him a statue. Build a Karsten Finvold statue somewhere around the park.
You called it one of the gutsiest performances in program history.
Yeah, I mean it's an impossible situation with an improbable outcome.
Yes, almost like Jeff Cardozo pitching in the postseason.
Jeff would have given up at least 2. Jeff would have given up 2. I think Jeff will tell you that.
Well, and after the season came to an end, Sully decides to make a change for. What's that, the second time in 3 years, 4 years?
Second time in 4 years. Brad Weitzer was with him for 12, and Craig Bell was with him for all 15 years. I think you're seeing Sully has kind of made a move to some younger guys that know analytics more, that might be better recruiting because of the age. When they got rid of Brad, fired Brad, they hired Chuck Girolman, who's young. They just added David Kopp as their volunteer assistant. It'll be interesting to see. I've seen some people want Brad Wilkerson to come back. Brad's the hitting coach and third base coach at JU right now. Obviously, the best player who's ever played at Florida. That'd be an interesting name. I'll be interested to see. David Kopp's a guy who, if you don't promote him He's a guy who will get a paid job somewhere soon.
I saw some also calling for Lars Davis.
Bring Lars back. Love Lars. I don't know. I think he's, with the moves he's making, trying to inject new blood, younger blood. Lars is young.
We don't get that one out, Nick.
No. Lars is young, but I think they'll look to hire somebody who can work with the hitters and the outfielders, which is what which is what Craig was doing.
Your overall takeaway just from this season as we wrap up, and how Florida fans should feel about this team, this program, and kind of where things stand after another regional exit.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell the fans that like really know baseball, and then the fans that tune in in June when the Fire Sully threads start popping up. I'll tell you this: Kevin O'Sullivan played at Clemson. They have a job opening. Their AD is young, is not going to get credit for their basketball program or their football program, so he wants to make a splash, and Clemson cares about baseball. He will call Kevin O'Sullivan. I don't think that call will be answered. Kevin O'Sullivan, I'm not worried about him leaving. He's really excited about the team that they have, so coming back next year. So that's the biggest thing. I'm not doing a long, extended coaching search for baseball. Again. I think the year that Florida had was a roller coaster, super frustrating at times. And there was after they got swept by Tennessee, I washed my hands with the team. I'm like, this team's not any good. Maybe they'll make a regional and I'll have to travel somewhere. I was hoping it was going to be Miami.
Yeah.
The resolve that the team showed and the fight that they showed, when everyone else except for them had given up on them, the job that they were able to do to rally around each other at 6-12 in the SEC, only 7 games above 500. I think they finished the year 19-7 and 19-5 before the region, or something like that before the regional. The job that they did was just incredible. And they had some amazing performances. You look at Carson Finvold in Hoover, Carson Finvold here, Brandon Sproat, he turned into the ace after Hunter Barco went down with Tommy John surgery. And it's a team, too. If you want to play the what-if game, what if Hunter Barco hadn't gotten hurt? What if Pierce Capalla, the freshman who was the Sunday starter, had been able to pitch more than one time this year? If you have those two big left-handers, I think we might be doing a super regional preview right now instead of talking about the fight that the Gators had to get to where they got.
For sure. Well, we fought through this episode with Nick's sores and all. He's got to go home and continue to rest after that. Bath. Yeah, you do. You got to get over there in that new complex.
I don't think they're going to let us in there, Zach.
Listen, I'm counting on a tour. Mm-hmm. I'm ready to see the Taj Mahal of football facilities open up here in a couple months. So obviously a lot going on in Gainesville, even though pretty much all the sports have wrapped up except for track and golf. So
except for the best coach on campus.
Yes. And obviously shout out to them as they go out and go for a national championship out in Eugene, Oregon. We'll be watching that as well. And we'll be watching how things play out with the official visitors this weekend. Make sure you guys stay locked with Gators Online as Corey Bender. As always, we'll be bringing you updates from those visits. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Abolverdi.